This is the palladium, platinum, rhodium, iridium, and gold miner. It has assets in Russia at a time that the US is showing strategic interest in critical minerals in the Russian Arctic. And Eurasia Mining has been there for quite some time. So it's listed in London. It is planning to have a dual listing on the Astana International Exchange in Kazakhstan. I'm delighted to be joined by Executive Chair Christian Schaffalitzky, who joins us now. A very warm welcome to you, Christian.
Thank you very much. I will just put up the first slide before I start speaking to you. That is the wrong slide. Just a moment.
That's okay. You're giving us a sneak preview.
Is that the right one?
So yes, we can see it. I think we just haven't got it in the slideshow. There we go. You've done it. You've cracked it, Christian. And with that, I shall let you take center stage.
Okay. Well, welcome everybody. Today I'm following up on a webinar which we had some time ago, so a few weeks ago, where I spoke in general about the corporate activities of our company, and we spoke about our assets. I answered a lot of questions. So I thought I would do something completely different today, and that is remind everybody what it is that we have in Russia and why are we so tenaciously working to make sure that we get value for all of us. And probably something which we haven't stressed enough in the past is how advanced our major projects are in the Kola Peninsula in the Russian Arctic. This first slide, by the way, shows as a background is a rather poor image of the West Kytlim mining area, which has been rehabilitated after, well, this area was completed some 6 years ago. And you can see that there's very little trace of our mining activities. And that's what we argue is that for West Kytlim in particular, that our mining activities have a very low environmental impact. So moving then to the main assets of the company, which are in the Kola Peninsula up in the Russian Arctic, we have got a suite of metals, which is nickel, copper, a little bit of cobalt, and PGMs, platinum group metals, which together form a very valuable asset in itself. But more importantly, the nickel and copper in particular are key to the new metals required for the battery industry, and in particular for copper, the whole infrastructure required for electronics, for just power lines even. A lot more power lines are being built with the diversified grid that is happening all over the world with renewables, etc. And it's important to look at the metals in that context. And we had focused on the Kola Peninsula because it had a history of base metal mining and indeed of PGMs. And the PGMs we started on. And then the opportunity came to acquire the adjacent ground, which again I will touch on momentarily. Just to recap on the details of the industry, basically nickel and copper are two of the primary metals that are supporting industrial activities worldwide. And I would like to focus particularly on copper, where there was a huge boom of copper production based on the Chilean deposits, which were worked basically from the late 60s through the 70s and to date. However, they have now, none of those very large open pit resources have been replaced. And there is little doubt that in the future, we're going to need every ton of copper we can find. And in nickel, it's less obvious, but that's because, again, the industry has changed in that there are two types of nickel, sulfide and lateritic nickel. And the sulfide metal is also, if you like, a declining resource in the planet, mainly because exploration had gone through such a long fallow period. It's still going on, in fact, today. Very few people are doing proper grassroots exploration, which was the main activity that I joined the industry in the 70s, where we were all doing lots of it. And today we're resting on the laurels of the people who worked in the 70s. And really, there is a need now for significant exploration required for sulfide nickel and copper in general. Looking at Russia, we're up in the Arctic, in particular in the Kola Peninsula, which is adjacent there to Finland. You can see it on the map here. And but largely also, if you go eastwards to the Norilsk area, that together with what we have in the Arctic, in our part of the Arctic, you have significant copper reserves where Russia is number 4 in PGMs, and number 1 in palladium, number 2 in platinum after South Africa. Nickel reserves number 3, and cobalt number 2. So basically, the key metals that are required going forward for the modern industry, modern industrial demand, is a very important area, and it's one of the reasons I think why, shall we say, modern geopolitical developments are focused on trying to sort out the Ukraine crisis and move on, because simply to have such a large part of the planet as not available for mining or exploration or trading is a big problem for the demand of Western industry in particular. To remind you then about what are we on about in Eurasia. Basically, we have the Monchetundra open pit assets, which are permitted and ready to go. And then together with that, though, what has changed everything was the discovery or the addition of the NKT area, which is immediately northeast of the West Nitis open pit area. And there we have really large-scale assets to be developed. But of course, in timing terms, they're behind the advanced and completed Monchetundra feasibility studies and permitting for mining licenses. However, we are expecting to complete the NKT permitting, the application for mining licenses later this year, and then it'll have caught up with Monchetundra. And one of the questions that I keep getting more recently, and I haven't answered properly, but let me do it now. The DFS is in a way partly a historical document because it needs to be rebuilt together with the NKT assets. And so this will be a combined development. There's no question about that. And therefore, we need to make significant changes to the development of the project to incorporate the base metals that are in the NKT asset, while the Monchetundra license is largely PGMs with byproduct copper and nickel. The life of mine we have here is 15 years, but as you'll see in a moment, that will change, and I'll show you why momentarily. A lot of people have been asking what's tier 1. If you Google tier 1, just to ask what is a tier 1 nickel mine about, you'll get this kind of page, and you'll see Eurasia Mining actually gets mentioned in the context of its NKT project. Basically, it's a large, low-cost nickel deposit with a long life, considered to be company making. And this is exactly why a company like Eurasia concentrated on trying to develop these assets going forward. Just having a look now at the district, you'll see, if you can see my point cursor, I hope you can. This is the West Nitis and Loipishnoon permitted open pit deposits ready for development, which together are called Monchetundra. Then we have a license areas which are the Monchetundra flanks, and in particular then the additional NKT in blue here, which was subject to the Ward at Armstrong early feasibility study prior to our more detailed work. And the combination of everything within that red area is what would be developed as a single mine. Obviously phased, but basically the single mine. A few things to point out is that we have 2 major power lines literally running down this main road here and in this valley. And that means that the area has really good infrastructure. That's the main road from Murmansk to St. Petersburg, and it's a dual carriageway for part of the road. And then you have the city of Monchegorsk in here, with a nickel refinery located right beside NKT. In fact, the early NKT mining was what created this development in the first place. But the mine closed without having completed its reserves and resources, because it was a different type of deposit which was being exploited within this license at the time. Nowadays, we can look at much more lower grade ores that are bulk mined. In the past, they were just mining out veins. So the reason I show this slide, apart from the infrastructure I've just touched on, is that we have within the immediate district a number of other deposits. You've seen us write about Nud, where the joint venture is on hold, but basically it's our information and the potential joint venture is available for sale together with our assets over on the west side of this district. And then on top of that, there are a number of other deposits that are fairly well understood, but which obviously could be developed in the future. And as the person as we expect to be the first company to have a operating mine and processing plant, we're well placed as first mover within this district, with a very long potential history possible in the development. This just summarizes the resources that we have in our reserves and resources, which we have within our license areas. And just pointing out that of the pure EV demand metals, Nornickel and Eurasia Mining are the two quoted public companies with assets in Russia, which are positioned to take advantage of the future demand for the metals that we all expect are going to be required. This is a historical slide. Our capitalization as of the 20th of May is shown on the left-hand side, all in US dollars. The market capitalization in the end of 2020 had reached 1.6 billion US dollars. The NPV on the NKT deposit alone, estimated by Wardell Armstrong in 2021, was 1.6, approximately 1.7 billion dollars. Research by H.C. Wainwright, who were the people who raised us a lot of money in the past before February 2022. In fact, this particular research report came out almost within the time, or just when the war started in Ukraine. And unfortunately, that is what caused the collapse in our asset value, as we all know. And then finally, they have the ACF report, which also published, was based on projections of what we could be worth in the future. But basically, I feel that we are sitting here working on this project simply because we do not want to lose the clear value that sits in the ground within our asset portfolio. So on that note, I'll finish speaking. As I said, I just wanted to recap to remind shareholders, of which I'm sure there are a few online, of what it is that we're working on. As I said, we're expecting to try and get our NKT project completed this year and added to the Mocha Tundra to make a combined feasibility study for the development of both projects at the same time. Some people have said, what about the Sino-Steel contract? And I would say, yes, perhaps, but one of the things we have to keep in mind is that the war is not over yet, and we have to make sure that whatever we do fits into the geopolitical climate that's available for us. And in the meantime, there is no question that the best way for us to get asset value is a sale of the assets themselves. But we will, of course, keep the option open of developing the project ourselves. That's it, Sarah. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Christian, I'm sensing a reluctance to sell the assets. And is that because the assets remain exciting to you, and that actually the business climate in Russia is softening, it's becoming more welcoming, and sanctions are soon to be lifted?
Well, we don't know what's going to happen geopolitically, but I would say that that is correct. Basically, we are feeling partly re-energized by the possibility that we could take the lead on the project. But at the moment, I can't possibly say that. I have to wait for other people to sort out the geopolitical situation. But at the end of the day, one way or the other, we're going to get value for this. This is what our objective has been for years, really. And obviously, and I said this before at the other webinar, when the Ukraine crisis began, we went literally overnight from a seller's market to a buyer's market. We had a lot of people interested in the projects, shall we say, Western companies who simply could not respond immediately after that event. And that has been something we've had to live with. And as I said, the main thing we've done is we've kept the projects going. We've made sure that the assets are maintained in good standing, and that they're available, that they have been continued to develop in order to maintain their value. We've done that, and that's the best we could do.
Okay, understood. Now, I don't mean to be rude, but for a while it's appeared as though the company's been dormant and there's been a lot of inertia. But you have raised money successfully. You're capitalized, I think, until this time next year. So What is that going to? Is that developing those assets that excite you, or is the biggest cost at the moment storing the concentrate that you've currently got there?
No, it's a sort of bimodal activity, really. In other words, we are working hard on making sure that the Russian activities are self-sustaining, and we've achieved that, and that that they can continue to work and develop the new projects as well as based on the income and the assets that are being the asset that is being mined in the Urals. Meanwhile, though, we have a lot of things to do, if you like, offshore, to put it crudely, not in Russia. And in particular, of course, we're looking at our secondary listing in Astana. And the reason for that is that there is a big chunk of our former shareholders who are not, unfortunately, served by the London market. And we were being approached by various, shall we say, investors with that in mind. What can we do about that? And what we're doing is exactly that. We're listing in Astana with that objective. And that's one of the questions that I've also been getting is there a prospectus and so on? Not exactly. We will be publishing what is basically a 7-page, almost box-ticking document that's required by the Astana Exchange, which will be published both in London and in Astana simultaneously. And but it's not a prospectus in the sense that it provides it's largely based on last year's annual report. So there won't be any new, improved information. That will come out in our own annual report, obviously, which will be due in June this year.
Okay. There is a question has come through about what's the purpose of having an office in Japan, and what are the staff doing there to sort of increase shareholder value?
Well, the office itself is definitely, shall we not closed, but certainly no longer a major priority because we're not developing the hydrogen assets which we had planned for Eastern Russia. That was the main reason why we had and also with Japanese interest, in fact. So that was the reason it was established in the first place, again, before the crisis in Ukraine. And so we have had to go back to our basic assets, which is what we're talking about. And however, the directors there have been really helpful and very useful. In particular, they have been adding a lot of value for us in the sale process. And that's all I can say about it at the moment. I'm really glad to have them in the team.
Right. Okay, so they're value add now. But is there a crisis where 10% of the company's entire share capital is concerned? One person is asking about the Quailed court case and disputed ownership of 10% of the share capital. Should shareholders be concerned about that?
I don't see why. I mean, there are always rows with between shareholders themselves. I mean, that's nothing to do with me personally. And the company is entirely neutral on this argument. We don't really mind. I mean, obviously, it means that shareholding is frozen in a sense. That they obviously can't buy or sell until the court cases are resolved. But as far as the company is concerned, we're neutral. But we want to be sure that when we were being asked to make a decision about the ownership of those shares, that we did not complete a transaction with the wrong owner, and that was what the problem was originally.
Okay, understood. So how confident are you that you'll get a secondary listing underway soon in 2025 and have a good team of
Yes,
market?
we're still on target for the end of this quarter.
The end of this quarter. Very, very good.
Yeah, that's the plan. Yeah.
And just remind your UK-based investors how they will benefit by you having a dual listing.
Well, hopefully, if it works well, which is our objective, because we'll be marketing in a completely different environment, is that we will be increasing the liquidity of the shares, which, by the way, is not bad. I mean, compared to some AIM companies, they're excellent liquidity, and so we're expecting that will improve, and in addition add further, shall we say, interested shareholders as opposed to just investors for the sake of the share price. I mean, investors who understand the strategic importance of what it is we're doing as a company, which, if you like, has got a bit lost because of the crisis. I mean, that's the reason I gave these slides today, to remind people why it is that this asset is really interesting and exciting.
Yeah. And, yeah, if, as I said to Thomas, if there is peace on earth, would you immediately see financiers, institutions, off-takers knocking on your door?
Well, I mean, based on the appetite beforehand, I'd have to say yes.
Yeah.
I mean, before the crisis, I'd have to say yes.
So here we are. I mean, you and I are speaking virtually at the moment, but who is banging Eurasia Mining's drum in Russia? Who are the companies' ambassadors who are making sure that you're relevant and yeah, that you're relevant in Russia?
We're blessed with having teams of a lot of our staff have been in the company a very long time, and it's clear that we've managed to maintain all our licenses in good standing. We've never had a license cancelled. We've never had any difficulties with our tenure. Basically, everybody's doing their job properly, and we are in good standing with the government. That's all I can say on that matter, and that is as good as it gets in Russia.
So I know that a lot of shareholders would I mean, you've appeared a couple of times within sort of 4 weeks. Shareholders are enjoying seeing you virtually. Is there any chance that they'll get to see you in person? What about an AGM
At the
in
moment,
person?
yeah. I mean, the real difficulty is that, we are conscious of the fact that we are internationally spread as a board, but I haven't made a decision about that. So thank you for the suggestion, Sarah. I'll think about it.
Very good. Right. So just to recap, because I had 4 sheets of A4 of questions for you, mainly to do with the sale and frustration that assets weren't being sold. But from your response to my first question, it sounds as though a sale isn't a priority, but the development of these
Oh,
juice.
I wouldn't say that now. Sorry, Sarah. I wouldn't say that. I'd say sale is a priority, but we are keeping in mind, in view of the changing geopolitical environment, that it could be possible for us to do otherwise.
Right, understood. So what would you like to have achieved, even under these sanction-filled conditions? What would you like Eurasia Mining to have achieved by the end of this calendar year?
I would like to have created the value that we lost before the Ukraine crisis. That's the simple answer. In whatever way it happens. Let me just say that I've been working on these projects since, well, more seriously since 2003. And, I originally selected the Kola Peninsula as my first new project when I came into the company. So it's my baby in that sense. And, I really think it would be nice to see the crystallization of that value as soon as possible, basically. And that's really what we're working to do.
You're a seasoned businessman, and I'm just wondering, is this the project that has given you sleepless nights?
Obviously, since the Ukraine crisis, it has. But at the same time, I had another project which I often laugh about. But basically, it's my first time as a geologist. I went to London on a roadshow as a youngish geologist for another company, and we arrived on Black Monday, 1987, in London. And by lunchtime, we realized it was pointless to talk to anybody in the city because all the screens were red and nobody was listening. So we went for lunch instead. And so that would have been my worst moment by far. Even though I was only a peripheral player, it was really educational. You can only do what you can do at the end of the day.
Exactly. Yes, I remember that. The screens were red, but the pubs were full.
Correct.
Yes, there's a silver lining. Christian, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much indeed. You've you've answered nearly all the questions, and I appreciate that. Thank you very much indeed. And
My
don't be
pleasure.
a stranger.